I started off at the age of 9 years old. I started off charging people to come in our house to get high with our mother, just so that I could feed my brothers and sisters. And I went from that to finding pieces of drugs around the house and reselling it to the people who were in there getting high with my mother and my aunt.
To have once been a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is the disgrace. I formerly was a criminal. I formerly was in prison. I'm not ashamed of that.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of I Used to Be a Criminal with your guy, Marlo the Motivator. Look, today we got a great guest again. Listen, this is the first time we have a female on the show. It's my girl, Tanasha Stevens. Hey, what's up, my sister?
Hey, what's going on with you, Marlo?
You know how it is. Another good one. Look, thank you for taking the time out to come to I Used to Be a Criminal. I really appreciate it.
Most definitely.
Most definitely. All right. Well, look, sis, let's jump right into it. Look, on this show, I let people introduce themselves. So go ahead. Let people know who you are.
So my name is Tanasha Stevens. I'm a 49-year-old grandmother and mother of a 14-year-old son. I have 3 children, but I'm presently raising one. My other 2 are adults. At this point, I'm not working. I'm disabled, but I spend a lot of my time in my community doing things in my community for kids. And I go out and I talk to, all my friends that are still struggling on the fence of, what they're trying to do in their life. And I'm also a part of CAB, the Community Advisory Board. And CAB, we're trying to give a voice to those who are formerly incarcerated because no one knows what we need to survive better than those that have already been incarcerated and gone through that. But even though I'm the person I am today, however, I used to be a criminal.
So did I. All right, so not withhold good from those whom it is due when you are in the power to do so. I was born in San Francisco, and due to my mama's drug and addiction, as well as drinking alcohol, and my father being an abusive alcoholic, things were really, really tough for my family. And my mom moved to Oakland. And when she moved to Oakland, her situation got even worse, and we were, homeless a lot of times. And it was really tough for me, man. I must admit. Let me ask you, can you talk to the audience about how you grew up and how were things in your household?
Definitely. So when I didn't meet my mother until I was like 6, I think around 6 years old. And when I met my mother, she was a registered nurse working at West Oakland Health Center. And she worked for my pediatrician, who is now my son's pediatrician and my grandkids' pediatrician.
Wow.
And life seemed good, It was a smoke screen. My mother, I grew up in the beginning of the crack era. And just like most African-American families that it touched in one way, form, or another, it also touched mine. And so I went from seeing my mother transform from this woman who had a career as a nurse to us living in the coldest crack house in West Oakland. And when I say crack house, I mean crack house. So I was raised around pimps, hoes, and drug addicts. Basically, that was my environment.
Wow.
That's wow. How I grew up.
Wow. Yeah. It's not unusual because, to be honest with you, tonight, the same applies to me. Like I said, I grew up in West Oakland, and my mama used to be in there smoking crack. I used to come walking to the drug house and see her smoking. And, that was really tough as a kid. And it's tough on any kid. And people at times don't understand that this affects people, right? And I'm not making any excuses for some of the decisions I made in my life, right? But I'm just saying there's a clear correlation between what I've seen and what I experienced to what I ended up becoming and doing in my life, right? And some of the mistakes I made.
Agree.
And with that being said, do you think that that some of the bad choices that you made over the years had direct effect or correlation with what you experienced as a kid up to an early adult?
Most definitely. I mean, I started off at the age of 9 years old. I started off charging people to come in our house to get high with our mother, just so that I could feed my brothers and sisters. And I went from that to finding pieces of drugs around the house and reselling it to the people who were in there getting high with my mother and my aunt. And so that opened me up to my two main addictions, and that was using drugs and having money. Those two were the biggest addictions I ever faced in my life. And
Right.
using drugs almost took my life on many occasions. So most definitely my upbringing and my surroundings when I was growing up played a very critical part in the decisions that I made as a young adult. And
Right.
because of that, I gave a lot of my strength and a lot of my what I thought was what I was supposed to do, because my instinct told me I had to take care of myself, my brother, and my sister. So that's
Right.
how it started. The
Right.
instinct to not want to be hungry no more, to not
Mm.
want to be called the dirty kids in the neighborhood no more,
Right.
and not to I don't know. It was just survival mode for me. So
Right.
even at the age of 9, for me it was survival. Like if I didn't do it, it wasn't gonna get done, and that's how I felt even at 9 years old. So instead of me
Wow.
outside playing double dutch or hopscotch or tag or swinging in a swing at a park, I was trying to figure out how me and my brothers and sisters was gonna eat the next day.
Wow. Wow. That's deep. That's very deep, Tanasha. And I'm glad you touched on that because, um, people don't understand that. You come in corporate America, you talk to individuals and they tell you, hey, man, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And they don't understand you ain't got no goddamn boots. So how you going to pull up your bootstraps, right? As a 9-year-old kid, that's too much responsibility for anyone. And so, and it's not unusual to hear your type of story. Me, myself, same thing. My first time I ever committed a crime was with my mother at the age of 9 or 10. And so I definitely understand what you're talking about there. Let me ask you this, Tanasha. For many people, there's typically an event or some type of situation, or maybe a person or even a group that they can reflect back on and say, hey, you know what, this is the point in my life when I start making these conscious decisions to do negative or bad things. So let me ask you, thinking back over your life, can you recall a precise point in your life when you made that decision to just go head first into the illegal activities?
Yes. I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
So at 9, I guess maybe 9 is the right answer, because I did start, I went from charging people to come in our house
Mm-hmm.
to selling them the product that they were out there buying anyway.
Wow.
So I could say 9, but when I was 15, I went out on my own and
Mm-hmm.
I ran away from home. My sister and brother were gone, so I left. But at this time, I had a full blown addiction. I didn't know I had an addiction. I just knew that what I was doing was making me lose weight, and it would keep me from being hungry when I was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 15, I went out on my own, and I decided that I wasn't gonna depend on nobody for nothing. Like I was getting
Right.
high with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I was depending on her to feed me the drugs at one point,
Right.
and I just decided I'm gonna go out and get it myself.
Right.
What I'm gonna
Right.
stay around here for? I can get more if I go out on my own. So at that point,
Right.
I left, and I didn't even just leave home. Like I left Oakland. Period. I went to Los
Wow.
Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and I started on my own, and I knew how to sell drugs because of what I was doing at 9, from 9
Right.
until the age of 15, basically. So I
Right.
knew that I could survive if I sold drugs. So I could support my habit, I could feed myself, I could have money. All of this in my head, in my mind at 15 years old, I felt like I could survive and I could take care of myself and I can move on up there if I sold drugs. And that was my mentality at that time. So
Wow.
I guess 9
Wow.
and 15 could answer that question.
Right, right, right. Okay, I understand. Reflecting back, I remember spending like close to 3.5 years of my life incarcerated. That was one gap. I've been incarcerated several times, but this one period, the longest time I spent was about 3.5 straight. And I hit places like, started at Santa Rita, then transferred to San Quentin, from San Quentin to High Desert over to the prison in Jamestown they call it Sierra Conservation Center. And I was like 3.5 years of my time. How much time would you say that you donated back to the criminal justice system? And where did you spend some of your time?
So I hit county jail at 17.
Wow. Okay.
And I must have went to back and forth from county jail at least 11 times before I hit prison.
Okay.
But once I hit prison, I gave them 10 years of my life.
Wow.
And I've been to all the women's prisons except for Sacramento. At that time, they had a prison in Sacramento. But I've been to CIW, I've been to Chowchilla, I've been to VSO, Valley State Prison for Women, VSPW. I've been to all three of them. And
wow.
I I was facing a lot of time on this last bid. I've been out of prison since 2003, but in 2000 the judge offered me 28 years, and I was dumbfounded. I didn't know. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. But for a whole year, it never went less than 18 years. And then the last day of court, he gave me 6 years with half, and I hurried up and signed on the dotted line. So I figured in 3 years I can go home. So I gave him 10 years of prison time altogether. Yes.
Right. You know, and it's sad. You know, if you really think about it, right? Let's call it what it is. You know, it's a form of racism, right? If you think about this shit, right? You're an African American woman, right? And you're minority in all kind of ways, right? And it seems to me that when we look at our criminal justice system, they're quick to offer us these high ass numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And we sitting in jail, you're facing life is what they tell you, and your exposure is this. And so a lot of times we jump on shit like 18 years, 10 years, 15 years, 28 years. Right. Imagine if you took that 28, you would have never got that 6.
I came close to it too. I came real close. The only reason I didn't is because I felt like you offered me a life sentence. All I did was sell drugs and sell my body. Like I never committed no violent crime. So, but I'm getting violent crime time. And at that time I had been clean for a year because I was locked up. So I had a little more common sense, and I just wasn't going out like that. So
right. I'm
that's
glad
the only
you
thing, because I almost signed, you know, and if it had been sooner to like me getting arrested, which a lot of times they want a speedy trial. You know, you go to court for your preliminary. Next day they offer you 28 years. And I mean, you know, and it goes so quick. In my mind, I'm still coming off the drugs. So it would have been real easy for me to sign for them 28 years and then be stuck. And I just thank God that I didn't, because then I wouldn't have my 14-year-old who I got right now. I wouldn't have my 28-year-old who I have right now. Like they wouldn't have never been here. So, but it's so quick. The system is so quick to move you through, and you need about 90 days to get a clear head off of coming off so many years of drugs, you know, and then you get locked up. So you slowly coming back, but you ain't 100% back. You're not thinking with a full mind. And so when they coming at you with that time, you don't know. All you know is you want to get out of that county jail.
Most
you
definitely
don't want to be in that county jail. You ready to go wherever you got to go to get out of that county jail. And that's how they get you. So,
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. They call it, I remember back in the day, they called it bullpen therapy. You know, they keep sending you back and forth to court on dry runs. And at some point, you like, you know what, I'll just take something just to get closer to coming home. And it's sad how we as African Americans tend to always get the fucked up end of the stick. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let me ask you. So, you know, many times people always hear about the man's side of jail and prison. You know, rarely do you hear about women's side of the institution. You know, and so let me ask you on the man. Well, I'm gonna put it this way: on the man's side, you know, it's horrible racism, gang violence, and shit like that. It's the same on the women's side. And then what was experience like for you in prison?
So for me, I would say there's only a slight difference, and that's only from what I heard. And what I heard is men get raped in prison. So women ain't really raping each other in prison, but it's a lot of gang violence in prison. It's a lot of drugs in prison. You know, if you were a street person going into prison like I was, you saw the streets right there in prison, which same everything. You know, the drugs, the fighting, the relationships, the domestic violence in the relationships. So if you wasn't fighting your mate, your girlfriend, or whatever you wanted to call her, you were fighting the the girls who didn't like you for whatever reason, or they tried to put girls that came from jail from up north, they put you in one prison. Girls from up south, they put you in another prison. But then when they opened the new prison, Valley State Prison for Women, we all went there. So everybody was in there. And they got LA gang banging against Oakland Bay area. So it was a lot of fighting, a lot of drugs. It was a lot of racism from the police.
Oh wow.
See, they kept us all. It was 8 to a room, and we had to have 2 white, 2 black, 2 other, 2 Mexican. So they tried to keep us equally racially balanced. But as far as the police went, you could tell the racism really well in the prisons by who got what job, like PIA. You working for maybe 90 cents, if you lucky, 90 cents an hour, or no, 90 cents a day or something, if you're lucky to get there. But 9 times out of 10, there might be 5 blacks and 65 whites, or so you could see the racism in the 602 system. And that was 602, for those who don't know, is a grievance that the MA has towards an officer. So that's supposed to be fair, but of course it's not. It was a lot of racism, not even color racism, but status racism. Like the cops were God and we were the lowest scum of the earth. That's a racism in itself, because we were treated a certain type of way just because we were locked up, just because we had made mistakes to get locked up. And it was a lot of people in there whose mistake didn't necessarily mean they needed to be in prison. Like I had an addiction. I went to prison because of my addiction, but nobody was trying to help that part of me. That all they cared about is, you committed this crime, you're going to do this time. And granted, I'm not saying that, I committed the crimes and I did the time, but I'm still human. I'm still a person. I was a mother at that time, had just given birth. I gave birth to my second child while in prison. I gave birth to my first child while in county jail. So I was a mother at the time that I hit prison. I was somebody's mother. I wasn't just an inmate, and they say prison is supposed to reform you, but it was knocking me even further down. It was stomping into me that I was a criminal, and I would always be a criminal, and I would be nothing more than a criminal. That's what prison did for me. It didn't help me learn how to be a better person, learn how to not to want to come back. I went to prison 6 times. I'm a woman. I went to prison 6 times. It shouldn't have took 6 times for me to understand that I am a good person, that I can live a good life, that I can be a respected person in my society, in my community. It should have took me going to prison 6 times. And it wouldn't have if they hadn't been beaten in me so much that I was nothing but a criminal, and I would be nothing but a criminal. They instilled that in me.
It's crazy. And that's what this show is about. It's about killing that stigma, right? That fucked up stigma, like, once a criminal, always a criminal. That's couldn't be further from the truth, right? You got people in our society doing all kind of great shit, like yourself, sitting on the Alameda Advisory Board. You pushing money around our county to help our county, the people that's coming out of jail, that's stopping the recidivism rate. I'm talking about multi-millions of dollars. You help make decisions on our society. You don't hear about this. Right, but we do hear, if you accidentally, if you come home and make a mistake and smoke something, and you get it dirty and they send your ass to jail, we hear about that, right? And so it's time for that to stop. And so that's why I used to be a criminal, to show people that, hey, look, that stigma has to stop today.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
Most definitely.
I totally agree.
And you said something else that I want to talk about, and it's the disparity of treatment, right? I know we talk about it more in society now than we did in the past, but like you said, you go into jail several times and you have a drug addiction that you're trying to deal with, right? But then you have some of our counterparts that's on the white side, right? And they now that they're taking these opioids and they're getting sick and they're dying, and what do they say? Oh, it's an epidemic. We got to get them help.
Now it's a problem.
But when the crack era hit, it wasn't a problem. We were all these funny shit that you know that's horrible. But like you say, it's a problem once our counterparts have situations,
Right.
and that's ridiculous. You know, um, that's 6 times in prison. That's crazy. Our society. So let me go to the next question. For many of us who have spent time in jail or in prison, there's a time or a moment in our lives where we come to the realization, right, that hey, all this foolish shit we've been doing, it has to stop, right? So let me ask you, can you recall the moment that you came to the realization and made a conscious decision to stop chasing after fucking jail sentences and become the person that I know, Tanasha Stevens, that I'm looking at right now on the screen?
Yes, and that's crazy because that's one of the best parts of my life. That moment, that moment that I realized that I could be better than this. I could do better than this. This is not me. I am a mother. I need to raise my children. And to be honest with you, I was standing on a corner
Oh wow.
and I was prostituting, and
Mm-hmm.
I was tired, and I turned my back to the streets and I asked God to